Welcome to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast, where we celebrate Minnesota's incredible fiction authors and the stories that make our literary scene so vibrant. I'm Rob Jung.
And I'm Michael MacBride. Together, we're the team behind Bell Cow Productions and the Bell Cow Catalog, a digital catalog designed to connect Minnesota authors with readers, libraries, and indie bookstores.
The catalog will be heading to all 377 Minnesota libraries, 80 plus indie bookstores, plus those in border cities such as Sioux Falls, Fargo, Superior, and La Crosse.
And now with this podcast, we get to bring those amazing voices to life. Every episode features one of our herd members talking about their books, their writing journey, and the stories behind the stories.
And before we start, let us apologize for all the cow-related puns you're about to hear.
All right, let's dig in.
Welcome to the Bell Cow podcast roundup. Today we have Evelyn Ann Casey with us, an author from Madison, Wisconsin, who sets her novel in southeastern Minnesota, I believe. And so, Evelyn, welcome, and we're happy to have you with us.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
How did you come to choose the southeastern region of Minnesota to set your stories?
Well, although I have not lived there, I had a roommate who did live there and introduced me to the area. And it was just so gorgeous. It was, the river, the bluffs, the waterfalls. So I kind of fell in love with the area. And then as I was thinking about where should I set this novel, it occurred to me there's this pristine area, kind of God's country, nature at its best, pure running water, all of that, all the symbolism of water and cleanliness and life. And then in the book, which has a good amount of religiosity to it, it had that connection. But the book also very much is about the undercurrents of religiosity. And I thought that contrast was really interesting. So I played with that and it really worked.
So tell us a little bit about the book, Candlewood.
Sure. It is at its core, it's a story of a young woman who finds herself up against the boys' club of the Catholic Church. It's she falls in love with the priest. It has some resonance with those who read Thornbirds many years ago. And
Yes.
more recently, I always describe it as Fleabag meets women talking. And so, we have that. But she's, like any young woman, any young person, there's so many shoulds in life. And she has to find her way. It's like she knows the rules, but does she know herself? And what rules is she willing to break? What rules does she make for herself? What rules, what is really sacred to her? And what does not give life? So, she deals on many levels with, she has a brother who's gay, and of course in the 70s that was really taboo. So has to deal with that. Has, a father who's alcoholic and, downbeat on everything and has to deal with that. A mother, the saintly mother who's crushed, not quite crushed by everything, but, sort of like, I don't want to turn out like her. And then, turning to the church, this beautiful on the surface, pristine, gorgeous, holy, I will follow the rules and then everything will be okay. And maybe not. So yeah, it's got a number of layers and it was a challenge to work with, um, but I learned a lot myself.
So what led you? I mean, you wrote things before you actually wrote this novel.
Hmm.
What led you to write fiction or this particular story?
Well, the although, as for most debut novelists, or any kind of writing really, you draw on what you know. So pieces of it, were real life pieces that provided springboards for, the characters here and the story I wanted to tell. Um, it's I've written a lot of poetry, some very lighthearted, some very deep, very emotional. I've won some awards for it, and so but putting your words to a novel length story is a very different thing. But I still try to keep the language lyrical where I could, or emotional. I think writing poetry helped me nail some of the emotional scenes, um, and put those into words. The impetus for this particular story actually came about from two sides. Oh, there was the abuse crisis in the church that we all became all too much aware of, you know, and then growing up, we had a family friend who was a priest, fell in love, but could they get married? No. So they kind of make a cameo appearance in the book. Um, but that became a real question to me as a person of faith, well, who had dropped out of her faith by that time. But, but still, it was like, is there anything to hang on to here? And so it was like, why? Why are they protecting emotionally unhealthy priests while they're willing to kick out priests who want to get married? What's the deal here? What's going on? And that led me to talking to a lot of priests, former priests, sisters, um, lay people who'd been active in the church, reading, and they all referred me to different books, um, and psychological studies. And I also found out from Baylor University that this is a problem um, across denominations. They have a really good body of research that's longitudinal. And it's kind of the one bad apple syndrome was what the Catholic Church was suffering from. It's just one guy. If we send him on retreat and straighten him
Yeah.
out, he'll be fine. And because they all knew, I was actually quite surprised at how open these men were and women. Um, Once they, established trust with saying things like they all knew their own skeletons in the closet, and therefore they were unwilling to, or I should say, all too willing to give the benefit of the doubt to other people, whether it was, you know, true love, healthy emotions that people were getting involved with other adults, or, you know, maybe he's just fooling around with the kids, kind of thing. Just all too willing to give that benefit of the doubt. So I wanted my book to speak from the woman's standpoint, how this is different from just an affair, how this is different when a man of the cloth um, does not only just falls in love, you can deal with that. We've always dealt with that. But, the knowledge that so many cross the line in, I'll say generously immature ways and in sometimes abusive ways because they just aren't handling things well, whether it's celibacy or just their own psychological makeup. And usually you know, it's I knew someone in college who um, was kind of written off as, well, she was a groupie. What did she expect? And too often that's the story. So I kind of wanted to give both sides of the picture and say, yeah, we're all human. I can live with that. In fact, I did come back to my church through this. It's like they need to be prayed for, and so do I.
Yeah.
So we're all human. And but let's give the picture a well-rounded picture the way it is, and let people go from there.
So it sounds like, I mean, the seeds for this were long forming then. I mean, you talked about childhood friend,
Yeah.
um, all these elements. I'm wondering, like, how long did this idea sit with you before pen to paper? When did you start writing this? And then kind of how long did it take you from that point forward?
Yeah. Um, It's about 8 years. There were a couple of stops and starts in between because it was just like, do I really want to deal with this stuff? The deeper I got, the less I wanted to deal with it. And
Right.
then finally came the moment when it was like, okay, am I going to do it or not? And by that time, I had joined critique groups, was working with some editors and, um, getting some good feedback and doing other things in between too. But it was like, okay, I'm going to finish this thing. And yeah, so I'd say a couple of choppy first years, a few scenes here and there, and then maybe 4 to 5 years of, well, but probably about 3 to 4 years of solid writing, and then the revising stage, of course, comes after that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then getting someone interested. Henschel House was my publisher. Getting someone interested took about a year after that. So I'd say about 8 years from start to finish.
Finish. You said that it led you back to your church. I just was curious whether you got any real pushback from the church from your novel.
Officially or unofficially?
I'll let you
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
let you answer either or both sides of that,
Open to
whichever you please.
interpretation.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I can't speak for the reaction of the church because
Mhm.
that's rather broad.
Yeah.
But from, as I said, the people that I talked to, I was very surprised. In fact, I actually went on retreat at one point. At one of my stoppings, it was like, should I continue this or not? Am I just being, a pun of a ploy of the devil, or is this worth talking about?
Mhm.
And you know, uh, I was greatly encouraged. He said, this is true. This rings true. Not all good, not all bad. Um, it rings true. And he said, I think a lot of people would find value in this just as a story of a person finding their way, um, but but also as a story of hope in that people don't need to stay mired in this. And forgiveness is a real thing. Um, can you forgive people for being human? Can you forgive people for being less than, you know, um, what they aspire to be? Um, and so I think that's the question and the challenge that the book offers.
Love it. Would you mind reading a short section format so we can get a sense of, I don't know, what it sounds like and share
Sure,
that with the listeners?
I'd be glad to do that. I'll start with the first chapter. Unfortunately, it starts with the bad priest and then moves on to the good priest. But we'll start where it starts because it starts in Minnesota.
Fantastic.
Okay, chapter one, Flicker. Rain glanced off my shoes like spilled secrets. A June downpour in Minnesota's St. Croix Valley left the street a blur of wet shadows. For the first time since graduating last year, I stepped off the curb in front of old St. Gabriel's arched wooden doors and crossed over to attend prayer group at the campus ministry center. Students clustered in the back of the chapel near the faux marble Madonna, while faculty sorted themselves out in pecking order. On the altar, the ever present beeswax candle flickered inside a tall hurricane glass, like Morse code from a ship's signal lamp. God is here. I settled into an empty pew and rubbed the bare spot at the base of the fourth finger on my left hand. Only 6 months ago, the promise of marriage and family sparkled. I watched the flame pulse. At the last amen, I roused to check my watch. If I hurried, I could meet friends at the coffee house for Rocky Mountain High Night. When I looked up, Father Darren's intense dark eyes were trained on me. One of the reasons I stopped going to prayer group senior year. A treat to see you again, Meg. Heard you're visiting the sick for St. Gabe's now. I nodded a quick acknowledgement and stood to leave. Faculty women circled the rookie priest, who looked like he spent more time in the gym than on his knees. They gushed over his homily on evil. As I passed, his hand slithered around my waist. I flinched and he dropped his arm. His ploys for attention rivaled a barfly's. But he wore the collar. I told myself he was harmless. Mrs. Gregg eyed the maneuver, then looked away. She might have been the object of his attentions 30 years ago. Without missing a beat, Father Darren delivered the punchline to a joke. Something about a banana and Eve's apple. I went to the coat rack to get my trench. Father Darren caught up with me. Stay a few minutes? Want to show you something. Born and bred Catholic, one does not say no to a priest. Sure, what's up? Let's take the shortcut. He motioned for me to follow. We left the gleaming limestone walls of the chapel and entered a dimly lit corridor. Father Darren said the passage led to the fellowship hall, a stippled length of sallow paint between all that was sacred and everything else. My eyes took a minute to adjust. I hurried to keep up. Halfway down the hall, he stopped short, and I stumbled into him. He missed my lips, but nicked a kiss on the cheek, a move any two-bit blind date might make, not a priest. My neck went taut. I stepped out of range. He slicked back his coarse jet hair. Only a kiss. No big deal. Relax. His furtive dodge left me clammy. What was it you wanted to show me? He moved ahead and pulled a pack of Winchesters from his pocket. Must have thought they were still cool. Nobody I knew smoked the little cigars anymore. He lit one and offered it to me like the man in their ads. When I refused, he blew a smoke ring. I let a safe number of steps fall between us. If I bolted back to the chapel, everyone from prayer group would be gone by now. And if he pursued me, though no taller than myself, his thick build could fell me like a sapling. Was I overreacting? An exit sign flashed at the end of the corridor, the fellowship hall on the other side. Only a few more yards.
Thank you for reading.
So is there a Candlewood 2 in the making?
Well,
And will it take less than 8 years?
yes, it better take less than 8 years. There are some minor characters, in the book that, let me put it this way. I liked what Friedrichsen from the who wrote the A Man Called Ove.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I liked what he did with taking his minor characters and then making a story about them. And so I'm playing with that. I have like 3 things on the back burner,
I see.
but
Okay.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Frederick
Okay.
Bachman's one of my favorite living
Frederick
authors.
Bachman,
Yeah, with the
messed up his first and
Beartown
last name.
trilogy.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. It's
That
great author.
Beartown trilogy does a great job with all those different side characters and things like that for
Mhm.
sure. But
Mhm.
So speaking of great authors, has there been any that have inspired you to do this, to sway from poetry to prose?
Oh, so many. Oh, so many. Well, early on, Barbara Kingsolver, of course, perfect. But there was more recently, Christina Clancy, has written some things that, kind of do this young naive woman going to, wiser woman to type journey. So that's been wonderful. And Jacqueline Machard, of course, who had roots in Madison, now is on the East Coast. She's, her original book um, that was picked for the Oprah Winfrey um, first first what can I say? Was it her inaugural pick for the Oprah Winfrey Book Club?
Yeah.
Um, that was The Deep End of the Ocean, and just all of her books have this real emotional beat to them. Just strong women with deep, deep emotions that sometimes can be, vivid on the page, and other times it's all underneath. And so, that was great. Joyce Carol Oates is another
Hmm.
one, you know, that was a strong influence um, on me. Um, yeah, I've just been blessed by, having access to so many good writers.
So if there was one that you could have lunch with, living or dead, who would it be?
I'm going to go back in time. This is and totally off the beaten track, but Louisa May Alcott,
Oh,
Yeah.
because
okay.
one of an early book I read was Little Women, of
Little
course,
Women, yeah.
and it was like there weren't a lot of books about women, little or otherwise, and she grew up at a very interesting time when women were even more constrained than today. So how did she use her characters to break out of, the
Hmm.
norm and give them real lives and real texture and real paths? I would love to pick her brain, and I just think she would be delightful to have lunch with, or tea perhaps.
I
Yeah.
remember reading Little Women and then kind of wondering like I don't really understand what the big thing was because like I wasn't old enough to realize like well she was writing at a very different time and different like all that stuff and then at some point I realized or I learned that she had been a Civil War nurse and so there's this whole thing called hospital sketches which are her essays reflections memoirs
Yeah,
of the period of
right.
time working as a nurse and how that was like it was forbidden for them to see men in this state of undress and injury and whatever, and how she
Mhm.
navigated that. And I'm just like, wow, like I gained this whole additional respect for who she was. She wasn't just this pop novelist or whatever that people kind of put on her. There was this whole other aspect to her. But
Yeah.
hearing you say that, now I'm wondering, is that where your character Meg gets her name?
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, it not consciously, but perhaps unconsciously. I think there's a definite chance.
Mhm.
There's a very definite
That stuff
chance.
creeps in sometimes. Like you don't know where names
Yeah,
come from sometimes.
Yeah.
So for
yeah,
sure.
So,
yeah.
well, Evelyn, when you're not writing poetry or prose, what do you do? What keeps you busy?
Well, my husband and I love to travel. We've Portugal, Spain, France, England, and around the United States. In Savannah, Georgia, a few years ago, that was a whole new experience.
Mhm.
New York, actually did spend some time there, um, and uh, anywhere in California. Um, San Antonio, Texas. I've learned that they have this river that they turn off and turn on
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
now goes through
The river walk. Yeah.
the the downtown section where the tourists
Yep.
all are.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was pretty interesting. And of course, northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the driftless area here that kind of
Driftless.
drifts over
Yeah.
your way too.
Yeah.
Um, and the Twin Cities, love hanging out in the bookstores in the Twin Cities. Um, for so that's kind of for fun, and of course theater and music, and love jazz. I played jazz the whole time I was writing this. It was just such a good background. Um, so I did that. So love music, um, and for work I was working several jobs, but uh, most recently I was working with the University of Wisconsin-Madison, um, in talking about Louisa May and nurses. I was in the School of Nursing, and I was managing outreach programs for they were doing, they had a grant to supply iPads to school nurses, and
Oh,
then kind of track how they used them.
Well,
So, for, following kids with asthma and so forth. And we put out a lot of modules that they could access and little videos, um, for, to support their practice, because they were, kind of getting more and more complicated kids to deal with in this K-12, um, with, the mainstreaming of kids was taking a big toll on, kind of their skill and knowledge base. So, so that was
sounds
fun.
like sounds like fodder for another novel.
I was talking to one about, about a particular idea, like, and we'll see. That's um, wasn't a character from the book. I didn't. Well, I had one nurse, but I wouldn't want to write more about her. So, um, but yeah, there were some things, particularly nurses, who work in pediatrics. So we might see something there too, at least a short story. So,
Okay.
hearing you talk about that study, I'll try to keep this as succinct as I can. But one of the things I remember reading about at one point was the medical humanities, which was this field that kind of came out of the 90s, and they're studying doctors that were burning out. And one of the people that became kind of their patron saint was William Carlos Williams, because he was both
oh,
a doctor
yes,
and a poet.
yeah.
And they kind of looked to him, and so they started having their doctors run around with little notepads where they either wrote poetry or little reflections. And then they engaged with them and had like different groups where they had to either kind of share stories or whatever. And they found that through creative writing and reflection and kind of community building, they
Yeah.
burned out less. Their patients had a better recovery rate, better rapport with their doctors. And so, anyway, if you want to like mash William Carlos Williams
Yes.
poetry and nurses together, I think you could find a great story in there, probably. So,
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Evelyn, you should know that Michael also owns and operates a publishing company. So if you're looking for a place to publish that book,
I'm
Okay.
sure she's well taken care of.
We'll be
But I
in touch.
appreciate. So I'm curious, just another kind of character piece, but like, is there a particular thing that you like to cook or that you're known for?
As a matter of fact, we had company last night,
Mm.
and I made salmon au pernod, which
oh,
is a dish that Meg eats in New York for the first time, and I knew all about it because I cook it. So,
I don't
yeah,
know
so
what that is. I mean, I could look
it's
it
an
up,
interesting
obviously, but
it's an interesting
Pernod,
flavor
Pernod,
combination.
yeah,
yeah.
Pernod is
Pernod is a French liqueur.
yeah.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
very it's
yeah.
it's anise flavored,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
in fact, in France, they oftentimes drink it um, cold in the summer as a refresher. Um,
Mhm.
but it has this lovely anise flavor. And when I make it during the summer, and I'm actually growing fennel, which is what
Anise
anise
flavored.
comes from.
Yeah.
The
Sure.
top of the fennel flower has little buds that are just kind of packed with wonderful. They're like little candies, little anise flavored candies, and I sprinkle that
Oh,
over this
wow.
dish, or put
Wow.
it on the side and let people have at it. Um, so yeah, it's just a lovely thing. It,
It's an interesting combination of flavors,
Mhm.
anise and salmon. It's one I wouldn't
Yeah.
ordinarily think of putting together, but now that I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I'll
so
send you the recipe.
do you? Yeah, please do. Please do. I would love to try it. So I love to cook. So apart from, we talked about books and who you're inspired by, we talked about um, your cooking, and how about art? Who are your favorite painters?
Ah, yes. So because art comes up quite a bit in this book, she ends up working in an
Mhm.
art gallery in New York for a stint. And Miro is one of my favorites. Modern art for sure, kind of the whole thing. Um, you know, I
You
grew up,
just
That
yes.
recognize anybody?
Oh my God.
That's
I have that print.
Kandinsky on the top, Moreau on the
Yes,
bottom.
yes, People and Dog in the Sun. I
Yeah,
know the name of it.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yep.
I have written a trilogy in which Moreau's painting El Segador was the central issue in the trilogy. It's a painting that he painted for this Spanish pavilion at the Paris Exposition 1937 that disappeared and is still lost. And
No.
so, yeah, so I've written a trilogy related to that, the uh, whole thing. I've been a Moreau fan since from my entire adult life. So that's always exciting to me when somebody else says Moreau. So,
Well, there we are,
yeah,
soulmates.
And
soulmates.
it's
Yeah.
funny, in high school, my friends and I wanted to skip class, but we were too afraid to actually skip class. So instead, we created a club called the Saline Cultural Arts Society. And it was just completely fabricated for the pure excuse of going into Ann Arbor. And then we had to figure out what we would do. And the Ann Arbor Art Museum had an exhibit, which was Paul Klee and Jean Moreau. And that was my first exposure to both of them. And we actually, because we're nerds, we actually went. Like we got permission slips, everybody signed off. We had permission to leave for the day, and we did. But we actually went to the museum and saw the exhibit.
You actually went to the
Yeah.
museum. I like that.
Michael, you're an embarrassment, Michael. Come on.
But
Uh,
that was my exposure then. I was like, oh my God, look at the rich, vivid color.
yeah,
And like
yeah.
it just blew my mind. It was something I'd never seen before. So, yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So, do you have any questions you have, or anything else you'd like to say to your readers, or pass along, or words of wisdom, or recipes, or lines of poetry? Or this has been, Evelyn, this has been just delightful. But
Well, okay, I will read you. This is instead of an actual dedication, I wrote, this is a little Bible verse that goes along with the thing, but it says, He will not break off a bent reed, nor put out a flickering lamp. And to me, that's all about it. It just summarizes hopefulness, that, there is, as long as there's a flicker,
yep,
there's
yep,
hope. And I think in our world today, um, we need to look for all the flickers we can and, give them oxygen, give those things oxygen, not other
yeah,
things.
yeah.
For
Amen.
sure.
So, so I will
Amen.
leave you with that thought.
Mhm.
Maybe also just in case people are looking for the book, um, you can go to my website and I have direct links to Barnes and Noble, bookshop.com, Amazon. On Amazon, it's also available as in Kindle form. So um, anyway, that is evelynanncasey.com.
We'll be sure to link it below with the
Yeah,
podcast, so it'll wherever it goes. You'll have your
yeah,
webpage out there and places people can find your books
good.
for sure. But Evelyn, thanks so much for joining us. I really
Well, thank
enjoyed chatting with you.
Well,
And
thank you. I
delightful.
enjoyed it too, and it was so wonderful meeting the people behind Bell Cow Productions. So,
Welcome to the herd.
moo.
Indeed.
And don't forget, you can see this book and more from Minnesota authors in the Bell Cow catalog, heading to libraries and indie bookstores across Minnesota and beyond.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bell Cow Author Roundup podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday with another amazing Minnesota author.